Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the office. I am your host, Luis Emilio Vargas. Today's episode is about boundaries and why they're important to establish healthy relationships with your friends and family. Thanks for tuning in.
Learning to set boundaries with your in-laws and with extended family of any kind, and extended family is anyone that doesn't live inside of our home. You have to be able to set boundaries with them and create quality, kind, compassionate boundaries to say, we're not able to do that. It doesn't match with our goals. And about the fourth time, they'll get mad and they'll say, but I deserve. No, I'm sorry. We're not able to do that. Well, we've looked at our budget and we just don't have room for that. And, well, you're a millionaire. I know, but we looked at our budget and we don't have room for that. I'll help you get an extra job. Yeah. I'll coach you. I'll be your biggest cheerleader. I love you. I want you to win, but I'm not able to enable.
So first thing first, shout out to Mr. Ramsey for that point. It was great, really helpful. And I think it's a great explanation on why boundaries are very important. I find that some people, in essence, count your pockets or maybe count their own pockets where they feel like they don't have enough and they see that you may have or not necessarily have, but you may be more abundant when it comes to the needs, right? It could be families, it could be friends, it could be you walk into a Burger King and there's a homeless man on the door. He implies that you have the capability to feed them, right? So this is where you have that mindset about what your limitations are and how can you navigate throughout day to days with imposing healthy boundaries and navigating those relationships, and just kind of having that discipline for yourself through your family and friends, of course, right? So I'd like to talk about a few topics of discussion to really emphasize this point: co-signing or car insurance, right? So for example, co-signing on a car. I think that's very crazy that a lot of people will come up to you and co-sign on a car, right? And there's some people that do co-sign on a car, which, in my opinion, when you co-sign on a car, the premise of why a multi-million dollar / billion dollar industry such as financing won't allow you to let me rephrase that, buy a car or finance a car, whatever the case may be, without having a co-signer or without having a significant APR is because they feel like by virtue of net, right? I like to use the word net and gross, right, in a different way. As we get paid gross, and then eventually it turns to net, right, before taxes, after taxes. When I say gross or net, I refer to before the BS as in gross and after the BS as in net, right? So net, after everything's said and done, the company, Company X, says we cannot finance you because we don't feel like after the BS, right, net, you could make these car payments for this amount of term, right? Because maybe you're not responsible because of your credit score, because your job history, right? Or maybe your wage to income ratio or wage to debt ratio, like stuff like that, right? And so this is where you would assess your situation. And obviously at that point, if you don't assess it, right, to the point where like you decide to go about to ask for a cosigner, it's a cosigner, it's on a cosigner to say, all right, am I willing to, one, ruin my credit history, ruin a relationship, right? At the same time, these things linger for a long time. Now, how can you circumvent the cosign stuff without making some people uncomfortable? Obviously, you could just be straight up before the fact, right? That's not who you are. If you really want to provide somebody a happy medium, why don't you buy them a car, a cash car, Facebook Marketplace, eBay. Sometimes I almost sold a car on eBay one time, right? Facebook Marketplace, buy cash car, help them out with the deposit, right? To buy a cash car, and then maybe you could help them crawl, walk, run, right, into having a car that they can afford without any help, right? I'm the type of person that I would never give you the fish. I would buy you the worm, maybe set up your fishing line. Maybe we go out on a boat or the shore and find a good spot to fish, and we'll help you fish. We'll look at the tide to see when the fish comes in, all that stuff. I would never give you the fish, right? I find that if you co-sign for a person, which I never necessarily did that before. I almost came close one time, but I find that those situations, when you put a financial onus on a relationship, Thanksgiving don't taste the same. That's what Dave Ramsey say all the time. Thanksgiving doesn't taste the same if that person was in your house, right? Because you owe them money or they owe you money, right? And so another thing too, nobody cares about excuses, right? When it comes to a financial obligation like that. So let's say you lose your employment or something like that. Like you don't want that to affect you because now the onus is on you to keep up the payment, or your credit gets ruined, repossessions, and then God forbid you get married, and then your relationship with that person on that loan affects your future relationship with your spouse or whoever that person may be. So that's another thing. On car insurance, right? If you put insurance in your name for another person, right? That's insurance fraud. At the end of the day, unless they live with you, unless there's some type of caveat that allows them to have it, that's insurance fraud. And those things are very dangerous because what happens is you kill somebody, God forbid, and you don't have enough coverage because they found you liable for insurance fraud, and now the insurance company is not approving your claim to help pay for property damage, personal injury, the residuals of the accident, right? And guess who's on the hook for that? You are.
I ain't gonna
And
lie, I'm
then you
getting
could get sued
hooked.
personally. You could potentially go to jail. There's a lot of other stuff that could happen. And there's lawsuits, right? I used to work at a personal injury law firm. You know, if you go beyond your policy limits in personal injury protection or property damage, right? It could be you will get sued personally. If you have a house, guess what? It gets liquidated. Now you're on the hook for that. Cars, repos, you could get liquefied. Right now, does that happen all the time? No. But the premise is that is the $30-$40 a month that they're saving by putting it in your name, is it worth all the headache? Is it worth the drama? At the same time, do they have a driving history that maybe they should improve on in order to get consideration? Should they go to a driving school? Should they be more cognizant on the residuals on why it's important for you to net, right, after everything's said and done, be more responsible? Or maybe you're not old enough to get a competitive rate, right? So those are things you need to encompass, right? Let's go to the next thing. Splitting bills at restaurants. That's a great example. I'll give you a good example about me a long time ago. I used to work at Walgreens. I used to make $8.25 an hour. $8.25 an hour. I need to pull out a calculator for that. But I was making around $400 a week. Damn, yeah. So 8 times, I was working 36 hours a week. So I'm gonna say I worked around 7 hours a day, right? After lunch. 8 times 7 is 56. You know, after the net and everything, I was probably making around like $42 a day. $42 a day times 5, that's $200 a week, right? So I was making $200 a week. After everything said and done, transportation, food, miscellaneous, rent, right? I was probably, after everything said and done, I was probably working around with like $12 to $15 a day net after everything said and done. I got invited to a restaurant. And there was a party of like 8 or whatever the case may be. I didn't really have money like that. I didn't have a credit limit. I didn't have like any real like variable of like income, right? And I already had a fixed budget. So my thing was, I was like, all right, to accommodate these people, I'll go and I'll have a limited menu, right? Variety. So I bought an appetizer and like a burger or something like that. It came out to like net after everything said and done. It was like $30 after tip and everything. However, that was my philosophy on me ordering those things, right? No cocktails. I bought a soda, an entree, app, right? What happens when the check comes? Before the check comes, actually, the host of the venue is like, "Hey, we're gonna split the bill." Blah blah blah.
Police! Help! Police!
Fatality.
Emotional damage.
Flawless
And like to
victory.
me, I felt pressured to not necessarily bring up my situation because I wasn't the most able-bodied or financially privileged person to kind of overcompensate that, right? Where I didn't want to say anything.
You
So I was
stupid.
like, all right, whatever happens. But I also felt like I was lighting myself on fire, in essence, to make other people warm or to make myself warm with confrontation. And so in essence, right, after everything's said and done, after tipping everything, my net, proceeds, right, or not proceeds, but my net expenses for that meal was around, it was like $37 after tip and everything. So I have a burger 17, the apple's like 8, and then tip and tax and all that. It came out to like $38. When they splitted the bill and they applied a gratuity for the party of 4, or whatever the case may be, it came out to like $60 or $70 a piece. Mind you, that's like 3 or 4 days of work for me after everything's said and done. For disposable income, the money I had available, right? So it was like 4 days of my disposable income. And that's one of those things that if I had a boundary for myself to communicate, I would have avoided, in essence, being poor, which I was already poor, but being in a more difficult situation because I was trying to accommodate people's, I guess, the cultural expectation of the table, not necessarily communicating my situation, or not standing up for myself and imposing a boundary. So my last one, just to wrap up this video, loaning money. Loaning money is where you literally put a price on a relationship. There's loaning. There is kind of like, hey, you're my temporary credit card because I need to buy something, and we actually using it. So since you're kind of like running you're the PLC of the event, you put the payment in. I'll sit you with the money later. Or there's other like types of um rebates, should I say? You're my mailing rebate for now, right? But in essence, loaning money, right? Loaning money is where you literally put a price on a relationship. I'll give you a good example. I used to play football, right? Semi-pro, rough touch football in New York City. And then one of my teammates, he not necessarily one of my actual teammates, but in essence, we all play with each other for the most part. So he's a teammate. He one day hit me up on Facebook saying, "Hey, bro, big bro," and people say the big bro stuff, right? The big bro. So he's like, "Hey, big bro, it's possible you can send me $10, blah blah blah." I'm the type of person. Look, I had the money, no problem, right? But my thing is, am I giving you the fish again, right? Let's say for example, you have a surgery. Let's say you have a broken bone. Let's say you ever seen a movie, the show Scarred on MTV, with people skateboarding and BMX and all that, and they fall and they break their ankles, and their wrist is going that way and their leg is this way, whatever, right? Um Imagine you had an objective fracture, and the doctor, and you need a surgery, you need a splint, you need recovery, immobilization, right? But the doctor's like, yeah, we see you have a fracture, you need surgery. But while we do that, eventually, here, take this Advil liquid gel, 200 milligrams, just take it. And there's no prognosis on when you're gonna get the surgery. We're just gonna give you the liquid gel, and we're gonna give you the liquid gel, and 8 Spanish, whatever. But here's the liquid gel, here's the liquid gel, here's the liquid gel. And you ask yourself, like, what the hell am I taking these liquid gels for? They're not solving the problem. They're just addressing the symptoms, such as the pain. And that's literally what it is. When you're loaning money to people who are not necessarily responsible, if somebody needs $10, you got to ask yourself, what is in that person's situation that they need $10? They lose their credit card, right? I can understand that, or their debit card, or I'm the type of person. I'll tell you this: when I go take a number two, and this is all analogy, right? When I go take a number two, the first thing I do is look at the roll of toilet paper that's supposed to be there. And then you can sit down and you do your thing, whatever the case may be. Because guess what? Imagine you sit on the toilet seat, put your cheeks on the seat, pause, and then you start pushing out. And then some people pull out their phones and start swiping on Marketplace or whatever the case may be, YouTube, Facebook. And then you look at the roll, and then you see that the roll ain't there. Like, are you gonna call people? Are you gonna be like, yo, big bro, man, you won't believe it. You're doing this crazy as hell. Like, is it possible? You bring a roll real quick, or you start banging on, those people that bang on the stall door, be like, hey, can you hand me a few squares? Like, I'm not that person. I always want to make sure that I'm capable of what I intend to do, right? So my philosophy is, what is the problem, right? What is the problem right, of that person that puts them in a position to borrow money? Because if you could solve that problem, the symptoms will go away. And so I gave that person $10, right? Because I thought I was addressing a problem. And guess what? They never paid me back again. And so in essence, I paid $10 to lose a relationship. And that's what happens when you loan money, right? You put a price on a relationship, and it could eventually be lost, in which you pay $10 net to lose that relationship. Whereas you was never intending on solving the problem, you was just addressing the symptom, hoping that the problem, when you give that liquid gel, maybe the bowls will fuse together, and next thing you know, like, he could bench press 200 pounds in a few weeks. Like, that's only addressing the symptom. The problem is the root cause of why you need to ask people for money. And if you don't solve those problems, such as assess your budget, assess your livelihood, such as your income, your expenses, how you navigate life, right? Because those are the things that you may be paying a lot of stupid tax, right? I like to use the term stupid tax, where, like, I don't think you could be smart enough. Let me rephrase that. I don't think you could be rich enough to out earn your stupidity, or I would say out earns your stupidity, right? So For example, you know how they said Rick James was rich, and you know a few coke sessions and everything, you lose money and all that. So, in my opinion, again, you could lose your money real fast, regardless of how you make it, and how much you make, should I say? So that's where it's important for you to be really cognizant on your financial limitations. Can you do this? Can you do that? Because at the end of the day, you have symptoms, you have problems, and when you're really cognizant about the problem, then you have to conform your lifestyle, your income, your job, right? Or maybe those things that are parasitic around you, such as subscriptions or financing other people's livelihoods, right? Net or gross, right? And other stuff like that. That way you could not necessarily light yourself on fire to make other people warm. So that's what I'll leave you with today. And that's pretty much it with this segment of boundaries. Thank you again and enjoy your day. Thanks for tuning in.